They've raised $23 million, but they first got conviction when they got accepted into YC with no website and no product.
I think it's 90% validation of you as founders and maybe 10%, maybe 8% for the space and 2% for the idea. But for us, it was huge. It was like, it made the decision for us.
Wait. Go back. What did Command Bar look like when you hit submit on the YC app?
No website. We filled out the YC app, which is a phenomenal exercise that I think anyone thinking about starting a company or trying to flesh out an idea should just do the YC app. Even if they don't want to apply to YC, like it's a great forcing function. And then we filled out the application. Then we had a very vaporware demo, a Loom video.
Okay, so they got into YC and day one, they started building an MVP. They said they spent 3 weeks, about 9 people weeks, fleshing out a version of the product that they could actually sell. Listen to the North Star.
We were just obsessed with getting customers paying, seek market feedback immediately route.
So they took the 3-week prototype straight to market, trying to get money. What channel did they use? And what was their messaging?
Hey, so-and-so, like I took a look at your product and I think the following things like seem kind of hard to do. You gotta toe a fine line. So like these things seem like suboptimal. You got a great product, but these flows like seem like they could be easier. It just seems like you'd love it if users did X more. I built a quick prototype for how we might be able to help. Here's a video or here's a GIF.
These are the type of interviews that I love to do because I feel like there's a clear formula in creating a successful company. It doesn't guarantee it, but the best companies do these common things. And James outlines that incredibly well. If there's questions that you think I missed, please let me know. I'll share my email. Boom. Welcome to the Top VC Podcast. I'm your host, Adam O'Donnell. I'm on a mission to help founders hit product market fit and oversubscribe their next round. I do that by interviewing founders and VCs around these topics. If you don't get a tactic or strategy, please let me know. My email is adamfodonnell@gmail.com. If you could just first tell us what Command Bar does. By the way, the first time I saw it was I was at SaaStr and I saw an airplane flying and I was like, who the heck is that? And I didn't put it together until I saw your LinkedIn. So anyways, I love it.
I'm glad you saw one of our creative marketing investments. Next year, I'm worried there's going to be like 6 planes flying around SaaStr. You only get one opportunity to use an underused channel. So yeah, my name's James. I co-founded a company called Command Bar. Everyone's experienced those kind of like pop-ups that appear in products, that you log in and it's like, do you want to take a tour? Stuff like that. We just launched this new feature, those kind of like really loud interrupted pop-ups. We exist because we don't think those are like the pinnacle of helping users, and we make other ways that help users use products. Kind of most prominently, we have a couple of natural language interfaces where users just sort of like type or search for what they're trying to do and then get results that might be like a quick action. It might be a customized tour, that's tailored to what they're interested in, stuff like that to help users wield computers. Really cool thing about our company is that we've been able to build kind of a lab to figure out what works better. We work with a bunch of really cool companies like Gusto, Netlify launched Darkly, HashiCorp, a lot of different types of users. We have over 15 million users that we reach. And so we can run, in conjunction with our customers, we can run a bunch of experiments to see what works better.
Like just going back to like maybe middle school, high school days, what did you want to be when you grew up?
My parents are both business school professors in the Bay Area. And so I literally have this memory of, winding it back even further. I was like 6 at like a soccer camp. Everyone's going around, what do you want to be when you grow up? A lot of like soccer player, a lot of like, standard stuff like astronaut. And I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And everyone looked at me and they were like, what is that? The counselors were like, what are you talking about? So it was definitely something that I was aware of, I think, a lot earlier than, even most kids growing up in the Bay Area at the time. I was that kid who was like, I would stay home from school to watch the Apple, the Steve Jobs presentations. And it's just always what I wanted to do. It felt like the best way to make an impact on the world.
At the core of it, it's like, I just want to help the world be a better place.
I'd be lying if I didn't say I think a lot of it is just like hero worship, honestly. Like, I think a lot of people grow up like worshiping athletes. And for me, I think that those were always just like really successful founders. And I just kind of wanted to be like that. Certainly there's an element of like making an impact on the world and helping people. But yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say it was just, partially a glamour vanity thing as well that I think a lot of kids are drawn to and then sort of give up over time. And thankfully this path was available to me to not give up.
You didn't just start out being a founder. You started out being an analyst at Bain, it looks like, and then continued. Help us with just that journey. And then I want to hear the decision.
So study computer science in college felt like, the right thing to study to be able to start a software company. And then I took a job at Bain Capital, in private equity, which didn't really seem like a logical next step for someone who wanted to be a founder. But I think there's a couple of reasons I took the job. First of all, like, incredible firm, incredible people. I saw it as like a business school like experience. Learned a lot about like how mature businesses and fast growing businesses like actually operate. Like spent a lot of time in Excel. Learned about software P&L. I think we're our financial hygiene is probably better than a lot of Series A companies as a result of that experience. But yeah, then I had the opportunity to join a startup. Actually, this was back in one of the crypto booms. I joined a startup called Basis, which was making first algorithmic stablecoin. And for various reasons, we decided to not launch the stablecoin. For those reasons, you can see what happened to Terra and Luna, which was a similar project that, for the instability that ultimately kind of brought that down was one of the key reasons why we didn't end up launching Basis. But the point was that I was kind of like relieved of employment because the company stopped existing. And I joined the company with two of my great friends from college who also studied computer science. And so it was kind of like perfect initial conditions to start a company together because we had been working on a startup and then we were all, unburdened by proper employment. So we were like, oh, we're not going to find a better time. We're like 25. We don't have anything else to do. Like, let's go for it. So that's when we started wandering in the startup wilderness. We first started working on EdTech product. A lot of like young computer science grads start working on EdTech initially because it's like what you know. Worked on that for like a little under a year. And then that actually is what gave rise to the idea for Command Bar, which we then started pursuing.
You started another company doing something completely different. And was this just a pivot from it?
So we actually didn't raise any money for that other company. So it was pretty clean. It did give rise to the idea for Command Bar, which basically, for the purpose of this conversation, we were building a vanilla web application. That web app became really complicated. And we were frustrated because we were like, okay, how do we help our users do stuff? Because there was a ton of functionality in the product. People were struggling to like figure out how to, convert their intent. I'm trying to, do something like duplicate a class, change some property of a student. And they just couldn't figure out how to like turn the knobs and dials in our interface to actually do it. So we were like, okay, screw it. We'll build an interface where they can just type what they're trying to do. This is inspired by like pattern known as a command palette, which existed in tools like Sublime, VS Code, Superhuman. We'll just let them describe what they're trying to do and then kind of route them in the right direction. And then we just became obsessed with this idea. Every product should have this. It doesn't seem like something that's domain specific. So that's when we were like, wait a second, maybe we're onto something that's much both bigger and cooler. One of my co-founders, Richard, described it really well at the time. He was like, I find myself thinking about this Command Bar idea in the shower a lot more than I think about CodePost, which was the EdTech product we were working on.
It's almost like I'm sensing this like polling where it's like it's less this like premeditated, like, hey, I'm going to go start a startup, and more like, hey, whoa, this is a good time to do it because I just got this company just shut down. So now I'm
I think at the time as well, it's funny how things have evolved, but at the time, the kind of pre-seed back a founder without an idea market it happened, but like it wasn't really as established as it is today. So we did really feel like we had to have conviction in an idea. My thinking on this has evolved, by the way. I no longer think it's necessary to have conviction in an idea to raise a seed, but we felt like we really had to have deep conviction in an idea to kind of like go for it. And so we kind of thought of our first project. We were really passionate about it, but we did think of it as kind of a practice startup where we're like, we'll learn how to build a web app. We'll learn how to like have customers, all that stuff. And it was really helpful for that. But I think deep down, we kind of knew like this wasn't the big swing.
Interesting. But since you hadn't raised money, you were just like, we're going to learn a lot. That is really interesting. So help us. What was the first action to go all in on Command Bar?
We applied to YC. With the idea, actually. I think we were a bit cowardly in this respect. Like, I don't know if we would have pursued the idea had we not gone into YC, because as excited as we were about it, like we had like traction with the other product. We had like lots of users, we were excited about the positioning, we were ready to monetize. And so we were like, we'll apply to YC. YC will be our Oracle. Like, we'll actually just did a post on this the other day. And I think that's not the right way to use YC, because I don't really think getting into YC for an idea, I think it's like I think it's 90% validation of you as founders and maybe 10%, maybe 8% for the space and 2% for the idea. And so, but for us, it was huge. It was like, it made the decision for us. And so we started, got into YC, and then we started, week one of YC, we were working on Command Bar for the first time.
Man, this is amazing. So help me with like your application. Did you still have the other company up and running and website? Did you create a website, and like how far did you have to go to like create this?
No website. We filled out the YC app, which is a phenomenal exercise that I think anyone thinking about starting a company or trying to flesh out an idea should just do the YC app, even if they don't want to apply to YC. Like, it's a great forcing function. And then we filled out the application, and then we had a very vaporware demo, a Loom video.
Built on what, Google Slides?
No slides. It was literally just it was a React app. Like it was like a local host situation. Like you could click the buttons, but it was more than just a Figma prototype, but it didn't actually work.
That's amazing. And to get into YC, that was your first time to apply to YC?
We had actually applied to YC way back in college for one of these EdTech ideas. So it's the second time applying to YC. It was funny. You mentioned, did we have a website? We didn't create a website for the new company. And week one of YC, we started getting inundated with emails from VCs being like, we're so interested in CodePost, which was our old project. Like, would love to, it seems like a really cool idea. Like, would love to chat. We were like, this is really strange timing. Like, we just stopped working on this thing. We'd worked on this idea for a year, and crickets, we hadn't we weren't looking to raise money, so we didn't like reach out to anyone, but no one reached out to us. And then suddenly people were reaching out to us. We were like, this is really fishy. And then we realized that every year, at least at the time, people got a hold of this list of people who'd been admitted to YC. And for us, we had put a placeholder name for our company, FUBAR. We ultimately ended up incorporating the company as FUBAR Inc. So we are FUBAR Inc. Command bar is FUBAR Inc., which is a nice Easter egg. But we had just put FUBAR. And so I guess they looked on our LinkedIn and saw the last thing, CodePost, and they're like, oh, they must have gotten into YC for CodePost. So must be interesting.
That is so interesting, man. I'm learning a lot. Also, the fact that you did apply to YC twice, that's a correlation that I see with a lot of founders who like YC takes, it seems like they have a higher likelihood of picking you if you apply multiple times because it shows persistence depending on the team that you've stuck with. But that's interesting. Was there any thought around, do we need VC funding for Command Bar? Like, or was that just kind of an implied thing that you just assumed?
Implied. I think we didn't really think about the sort of bootstrap path. I think partially because we wanted to do the, grow fast, give it a big swing, and we felt like the idea was supportive of like a company like that.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, because you told me at the beginning of this podcast that your funding journey was actually pretty smooth. I would love to know what your actions were when you were at YC, from like, okay, let's go all in on this. Like, what was the very first step that you did to validate?
First, we built like a semi-functional version of the product that like someone could use.
Like, was that like a week at a time?
Probably like 3 weeks of like 9 people weeks, intense people weeks, maybe more than 9, 40-hour weeks. And then, we were just obsessed with getting customers paying for it, because this idea was very weird and wacky. Like, I think part of the reason we were a bit hesitant to dive into it and why we wanted YC's validation was there aren't a lot of companies that like are embedded in other software products, like component as a service. We can maybe talk about like how we pitched the idea, but our exemplar was in product chat. So the market created by, I think, Intercom and Drift. Felt like that was a good example of like 10 years ago, no chat didn't exist on the web, or at least wasn't mainstream. And then suddenly it's in the bottom right of every site. We felt like the thing we were building could be that for software, could be like a new universal building block. But that's obviously the big vision. Like in the short term, we wanted to validate that had legs. So we were just obsessed with getting customers. So we definitely went the kind of like seek market feedback immediately route instead of the like build, perfect, and then ship a much more polished product, which actually at the time was very in vogue. Like there were a lot of YC startups that were much more serious about like perfecting their prototype before putting it into the market.
So you had the product, you just built it for 3 weeks. Like, what's your first step to like get people on the phones or on the Zooms or
cold
whatever?
email. We had some friends, who were willing to put it into their product to give us some reps, but they didn't pay for it. So literally just cold email. I think what worked about it was they were very personalized. So what we would do is we built a little Chrome extension that let us like embed our product into other companies' products, or at least a version of it, like a lightweight version of it. So the email was something like, hey, so-and-so, like I took a look at your product and I think the following things like seem kind of hard to do. You got to toe a fine line. So like these things seem like suboptimal. You got a great product, but these flows like seem like they could be easier. It just seems like you'd love it if users did X more. I built a quick prototype for how we might be able to help. Here's a video, or here's a GIF. And that was great. It was super awesome response rate. I think we got like a 20% positive response rate on like 100 of those. They take time for sure. It's a risk. But the thing I really like about the strategy, and I actually advise a lot of founders who are just getting started to do this, is I think if you do this strategy well and you don't get like, say you send 100 of these emails and you don't get 10 responses, assuming like people are opening the emails and like, if you got the kind of physics figured out, I I think it's fair to say like your idea is not good, or like there's something critically holding you back. Like maybe you're emailing the wrong person, or there's some, big existential blocker that you need to fix. Otherwise, like I think it's a really good litmus test for, is your idea like interesting enough that your buyer is willing to like at least talk to you after this like highly personalized outreach.
That is really good. 2 questions. How did you get the emails, and how did you decide who at the company to send it to?
Emails, the YC. We use the YC list, and then we also use a bit of a hack, which I don't think I've talked about before, but it's kind of a fun one. We wanted to email people who we thought would be aware of the pattern. Like we didn't really want to educate people on like this concept of a natural language search bar. So for anyone who uses Superhuman, Superhuman was one of our big inspirations. Use Superhuman, nice. So when you hit Command K, Superhuman command, that was one of our big inspirations for the product. And so we wanted to email people who used Superhuman. And so if in Superhuman, today still, like you can see in Superhuman if the person you're emailing uses Superhuman. And so that was nice, but it's slow. Like you don't want to like put every email into Superhuman. So we found that there was an API endpoint that Superhuman was using to kind of get that information. Like given an email, does the user use Superhuman? And so we took our list that we'd assembled from YC and other sources of like thousands of emails and just like, kind of abused that endpoint. Someone probably got mad at us at some point to see like who of these, thousands of founders was using Superhuman. And then we emailed those people.
This is so good, man. And for you, this test resulted in a positive.
Yeah, we got, it wasn't huge. We got, we had like, I don't remember how much. I think we had like 20, by the end of YC, I think we had like 20 customers paying us hundreds of dollars a month each for the product. So, it wasn't like we didn't get like $1 million contract or anything, but it made us feel confident that this had legs.
That's amazing. And you were able to acquire them from the same source. They were similar type customers. So you kind of had that like repeatableness.
There was some repeatability for sure.
Yeah. That's the founder of Electric AI. I interviewed on another podcast, and he was saying like hitting product market fit is less about a revenue milestone and more about the similarity of like the acquisition piece, the actual onboarding piece, and actually like keeping them happy in the type of customer. So it's like, it doesn't matter the money in this case. It's like, we found a lot of people who are willing to do this.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think the only thing I'd add to that is how similar is the group of people you're selling to or running through that repeatable process to the group you eventually want to sell to. Because if you found some really great niche, product market fit is relative to the market, right? If you found like a really great niche, but that doesn't look a lot like the market you need to sell to like build a big company, then that's great, but maybe that's not like, you shouldn't settle there. I think for us, one of the things that, this is much more true at our Series A than our seed, but like one of the things that I think was most awesome about our position going into our Series A was we had gone up market like a lot faster. So a lot faster than we expected. We had expected to grow with tiny companies. Like maybe we get a lot of small startups using our thing. Some of them grow, amazing. At some point we get the attention of like bigger companies. But we found we were able to get bigger companies to use our product, put it in production in front of like millions of users a lot faster than we expected. Kind of crazy if you think about it, like trusting like a small startup to do that. Really appreciate those early champions who get way too little credit, by the way, in the success stories of startups. And so at the time, we were able to point to these success stories and be like, look, there's a lot of companies like the customer set we have that exist and could use our stuff. It wasn't as much of a leap of faith that you had to say, oh yeah, okay, well, they've found product market fit within these startups paying hundreds of dollars, but like, are they going to be able to secure, a $100K contract?
Man, this is so good. Thank you so much. I know we're past time. Just the last question is, could you pretend I'm the one of the VCs that you met with right after YC when you're beginning to raise your round? Because once again, like, it's very clear, hopefully everyone's listening, when you have this kind of traction and you have like experiment and you can document the data of these paying customers, then you're going to be able to close a round much faster. But would love to hear that 30-second story of how you describe the opportunity.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's funny, we describe it differently now, so I'm trying not to like pollute the original pitch with the current pitch. But I think the pitch was something like this. Like, we all use software every day. we use way more software than we've used in the past. Like maybe in 2000, you used like, Internet Explorer and Salesforce, and now we use like all these SaaS apps, right? To just run our lives. And I think we can all agree that using software is not the magical experience that maybe we thought it was going to be when, PCs debuted in like 1990. We get frustrated by these interfaces, by having to translate what we want to do into these products. And there are various ways of fixing this. There's, help centers, there's in-app chat, but none of these feel like they're papering over the fundamental problem, which is that these interfaces are not as easy to use as we thought they would be. And I think a core reason for that is because products look a lot basically the same in 2020 as they looked in 2000. There hasn't been a ton of innovation in kind of the core building blocks of interface design. There's obviously been a lot of progress, but the core building blocks, the menus, the buttons, et cetera, are the same. We think this is not as good as we could do, and we think a key way of making interfaces easier to use is by using natural language. So allowing a user, instead of to have to hunt around and kind of do a scavenger hunt to figure out how to translate their intent into the product, let them just describe what they're trying to do and then route them to the right place. And our hypothesis, again, this is back when we had like 15 customers. Our hypothesis is that this works well because the customer can use their own words. They don't have to use the words of the product. You know exactly what they mean. So even if you aren't able to provide the right result in the moment, you haven't configured it in our product, you can then look at those results and see like, what are the kinds of things users are asking for? Okay, then I can figure out how to serve that intent better in the future, or do whatever I need to do with it. Maybe it means I need to build something new. So we call those dead ends. So that's a key part of our product today, is like the insight into what users are trying to do. But yeah, so our solution to the interfaces could be better problem is natural language. And we think this could be a building block that becomes universal in software.
I love it's the progression of it was just so logical. And you're kind of like, we can all agree. And you're like, yeah. So like you're just walking them down the logical conclusion, which is all. And from someone who uses Superhuman, by the way, like that, I love
you would have been in our email list.
Yes, I love using it just because like, and I can't quit. Like even like someone's have question, I'm like, is it that much better than Gmail? I mean, I think it definitely feels like it, but I've kind of as I forget about what it was like to use Gmail like a year ago, I find myself so connected to just the command bar that like I'm not going to stop.
It's addictive.
You know what I'm saying? So that's another piece of what you're saying as well. But this has been amazing.
That was our world domination strategy. It's like we feel like there's a tipping point. Like once people start to expect this experience in products, then we're gonna have a much easier time selling this to the marginal company, because they're gonna say, well, I need something like this. Since then, we've expanded the product a lot. It's no longer just the search bar. We have a lot of other ways of capturing and predicting user intent, but the kind of core idea is the same. Just make software easier to use by starting with user intent. But I actually wanted to just quickly pick up on, do you have a few more minutes?
Oh, absolutely, man. I'm sorry for going over.
No, don't worry about it. I wanted to pick up on something that you said kind of in response to the pitch, which I thought was interesting.
Bring it.
That I kind of walked you through the logical conclusion. Yes, that's exactly what I did. But I actually think that's suboptimal for pitching. And I think it's a mistake that like basically every first-time founder makes, which is the kind of monologue approach. Like I'm going to craft my pitch, the elevator pitch. I'm not going to leave any, I'm going to use all the time allotted to me. I'm going to like really dial in every detail. It's like the Shark Tank pitch. And I think that underestimates the extent to which pitching an investor is sales. And if one of our salespeople got into a sales meeting and just talked the whole time, Gong would yell at them, and it probably wouldn't be very effective because you've learned nothing about the people you're talking to. You have no idea if what you said resonated. You have no idea if what you know in your head that's informing why you think this is an amazing opportunity is in their head. So what I encourage a lot of founders that I invest in today to do is like treat this as sales and ask questions, do attention checks, create opportunities for someone to say, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like you said, X, Y, and Z was a huge problem. Like I have not experienced that. Why is that a huge problem? Because otherwise you risk getting to the end and the person's like, well, I didn't get that at all. So life is short, pass. Unless you've got, traction that's so amazing that it doesn't really matter what you say in the call. And I think that's it's really hard for a lot of young founders who haven't experienced sales. Like the only reason I think I am more effective at that style of pitch today when I'm talking to investors is because done founder-led sales, like learned how to do kind of discovery, open-ended question asking and things like that to kind of tease out the other half of the pitch, which is what the investor is thinking. So I try to kind of do role plays with founders to kind of help them develop that two-way pitch.
That's such a great point. So many people forget that. And when I was at Mighty Capital, just hearing pitches, I remember just the ones that just do the standard pitch, which is what it's like this false expectation that everyone just seems like, oh yeah, I'm pitching. Like that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what
they expect me to do. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I remember there was a couple founders who did not do that. They basically said, here's what we do. What questions do you have? And the VCs were like,
how do you want to use this time? I sent you the deck. Like, you know what? Yeah.
And like it just pulled them in and they're like, well, this is my first question. And then it's like, okay, cool. And then they jumped to that slide and then they gave a quick point on it and said, okay, like what other questions? And it's like, shoot, it changed it. And those are the ones that we like more likely invested in. It was so
totally.
Interesting.
I think there's a tactic there, which is, it's a bit risky, but it's I've seen it work where sending the deck ahead of time is an approach. I think even better is sending like a Loom video. I love Loom. I think Loom is underutilized in like many parts of life and work. Send the Loom video, send the Loom pitch, send the Loom product demo. I think it's high risk, high reward. It's high reward in the sense that you can come to the conversation being like, I gave you all the information you want. Like, what do you want to talk about now? Which can lead to really strong conversations with investors. I do think it's high risk though, because it risks someone misinterpreting something you said or forming a belief about something that, you know, is not useful for your pitch. And then you don't get the opportunity in the moment to correct that or divert it. You know, if you're pitching live, if you're doing a demo live and someone's like, wait a second, like, how did you do that? That seems made up. You can explain. But if someone sees it in the Loom video and they just think, oh, that's made up, then they might just like pass and show up to the meeting like already anchored on the idea that they're not going to move you forward.
Man, that's so good. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for jamming. Yeah, this was a fun conversation.
Best way to reach out to you if we're trying to get any advice. I know you're crazy busy. Is it LinkedIn or Twitter?
Oh, wow. Depends how spicy you want the advice to be. Probably Twitter. But either works. Twitter, I'm at Dazloid.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great jamming, man.
Thanks for listening to the Top VC podcast. I'm your host, Adam O'Donnell. I'm on a mission to help founders hit product market fit and learn how to oversubscribe their next round. If you didn't get a tactic or strategy in either of those, please email me at adamfodonnell@gmail.com. Or if you just have any other feedback, suggestions, I want to keep improving the way that this podcast serves founders. Boom.